So we'll move into our third pillar, which is prevention. So this involves new interventions that are proven to work, things like expanding testing and scaling up those testing efforts, pre-exposure prophylaxis, also called PrEP, and then the implementation of syringe service exchange programs. So I want to first ask our funders to tell us how this will extend the impact of our current linkage to care and navigation services for PrEP and PEP.
So I would say, number one, we're trying to make sure we provide funding opportunities to those communities, to those organizations that are already doing the work, that already are in those communities that need it the most. In terms of PrEP, it's still a lot of different communities that still don't even know what PrEP is, how it can benefit you as a person. So that's number one, the education piece, because we can't prescribe it until you actually know what it is. In addition to that, utilizing our mobile testing unit to get out in the community, and then utilizing telehealth to provide that access, because sometimes if you have that person right there and you finally convince them like, hey, you can get on PrEP, you don't be like, oh yeah, go to the health department, it's done. So if you have that access right there on that mobile unit, go ahead and try to provide that access to that individual. But I really want to push the emphasis of providing the education piece, because a lot of communities are still, unfortunately, are not aware of what PrEP is and how it can benefit you. And another shameless plug, since everyone has been doing it, Talk, Test, Treat Central Florida website. You can go to our website, find out what PrEP is, find out the different PrEP providers within our 4-county region, and you can have that access to care. So I just wanted to make sure that we are not just providing providers to prescribe the PrEP medication, but to also provide the education piece behind it, because that is a huge piece that is missing, because a lot of people still don't know what it is.
I think another important access in this prevention pillar is to treat treatment as prevention, because our goal is to get clients into care and get them virally suppressed, because once they're virally suppressed, they're untransmittable. So they're U equals U, and really increasing the knowledge of the community. If you're undetectable, you're untransmittable. So using treatment as prevention is key in our efforts to end the HIV epidemic. So I think our mission as a community is for those clients that are currently have a positive diagnosis that they link to care, and we do everything that we can in our power to get them to that viral suppression state in order to prevent future transmissions.
Thank you.
And actually, one of the things that I think about too is like when we think about breaking the HIV silo, it's not just about what we do in person, but also what we do virtually. Because when we look, like I'm an admin on so many Facebook pages, right? And when I look at like the HIV pages that we have, it's not just the same people showing up to the same in-person events. A lot of times it's like the same people liking our content online. So it's like, how do we partner with the other like organizations? And part of that is coming to those organizations, and the same way that we come to the clients and we're like, what do you need? We have to start talking to those organizations like, what do you need? Like, what is your mission? How can you meaningfully involve people living with HIV? And what is a way that makes sense for you to promote our message without taking on a workload, having to experience mission creep? And I really think that that's our way to start breaking that silo and really reach the organizations, and really reach the people that are not going to see our website or go to our clinic or, be there when we do our testing events.
I would also add importance of educating also providers, especially primary care providers who are the family providers, right? When you go in because you got a cold or because you got a sore throat, right? Those people see a lot of people, and most of them don't know that they can actually also prescribe PrEP, and that would really help a lot, even with the education piece, right? I am going to trust the doctor that I go to all the time, more likely than the one that I just met for the first time. So, but a lot of primary care doctors here in Orlando and in our region, unfortunately, don't know that they are too empowered to be part of the solution.
And just to piggyback off of what you just said, Felipe, so we have a provider detailing team that is going out to our medical providers and providing that education piece to them. Number one, we're doing an assessment of what they even know. And then that way we can build upon that and just say, okay, in addition to prescribing birth control, so we know that people are having sex, you can also prescribe PrEP. So that can also prevent the individual from contracting HIV. So just making sure that our providers are well aware of what's going on, but also the community, to talk about what you were saying, Andreas, in terms of social media, and we're the same people are liking our page. So I noticed that on a lot of things on Instagram as well as Facebook. So now getting into streaming. So we having videos in English, Spanish, and Andrea will be getting with you for Creole to be able to put that message out, because we all on Hulu, we are all on all these different YouTube, different pages like that, and everybody has those 30-second messages. Why we can't put a message about ending the HIV epidemic? Why we can't have a message about PrEP and what it is, even if it's in its shortest form, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. That's providing access, that's providing education to people who may not be within our echo chamber of knowledge. So that's another way that different, but we're trying to make sure that the message is getting out.
And I would add to that, you guys know, I think social media, it has the power, if utilized, to transform and educate. And, if somebody's wondering, like, well, what can I do? Generally just, sharing a HIV post, sharing a, something like that, and that's not necessarily what you would do on your own social media. It radically changes the conversation. It helps normalize it. So it does combat stigma, it does educate, and of course, again, making sure it's from a good, quality, reputable site like the CDC, the Talk, Test, Treat, one of those organizations where it's good quality information. It can start the conversation within your own group of friends. And then of course, as a patient advocate, I can't tell you how many doctors are now prescribing PrEP because someone came to me and said, hey, what do I do? And I'm like, you don't have to go to Dr. A or B. Medically speaking, the CDC actually recommends that everyone have at least one HIV test in their lifetime. And for those that are sexually active, which are a lot of us, to at least have one a year. So we talk about priority populations. Well, it's a priority population of one. Make sure if you are going to a doctor that you ask your doctor, for an HIV test. And then if you have HIV, then you could get into treatment. And if you don't have HIV, what are your prevention methods? Whether it's PrEP or something like that. And Prevention Access Campaign, it was driven by peers. It wasn't a medical thing that actually started. So if you're wondering about the power of one, it really was an informational campaign, and then data was collected, and it showed that an individual living with HIV and has been virally suppressed for over 6 months has never HIV has never been transmitted from someone like that. It's actually the most effective way to prevent HIV, and it's a radical concept, but the data supports it, and all of that information is at Prevention Access Campaign. And I think when we normalize those conversations and share it not just on but on mom and pops and family social media, it really changes the scope of the conversation, so it becomes a normal thing. Like we're talking about peanut butter and jelly, and we had sex the other day, and this is how we used our HIV prevention methods, right? Like it would be great to have that type of fun, simple conversation. So
I'd like to pivot back to mobile PrEP and to talk about how telehealth is going to be available on that. We also know that mobile PrEP is going to be used to not only identify clients who need to be linked to care through testing, but who are available to be linked to PrEP, right? And to have an appointment, whether that's on the unit or through a virtual appointment with a prescriber, to get that linkage, to get the labs done, right? And to get the follow-up for refills. What can you tell us about the need to meet people where they're at using a mobile unit, and really linking people to PrEP, especially those harder to reach individuals, our homeless population, sex workers, meeting people in unconventional settings where we don't usually test, like bathhouses?
Yes, with the mobile PrEP unit, we use a different strategy to get people into care. So by providing different services. So we screen people for diabetes, blood pressure, and on top of that, we include the HIV. So that's one of the strategies that is working. And also, we meet the client where they are. As you mentioned, we go to the plaza, the mall, in the community, exactly. It's like the Orlando bathhouse. That we meet them right there on the spot. They are at the pool having fun, and they come back and check out, get tested, and this is what they like. We meet them right there with the towers. Nobody else doing it. So this is it. That's the fun part of it. People just walk around with the towers and they are getting tested, and this is it. So, and the strategy, that's what's going to help us ending the HIV epidemic, and also providing the PrEP line. People knows that, hey, there's a number that you can call to get on PrEP by dialing 321-779-PrEP, 321-779-7737. This is the number you can either call or text, and we'll get you PrEP. And also, one of the things we do is at-home testing if they are in a hurry, because sometimes people has appointment, they cannot wait for that 15 minutes to get tested. We have the at-home testing right there. Take it with you. We'll follow up with you if you need help. Call us to help you out to understand how the at-home test working. So we're using any possibility to get people tested. There is no excuse for someone to, if you're willing to get tested, yeah, you meet with us and you will get tested. So. And it's working. And on top of that, also we do the screening for mental health, screening for substance abuse. So during that conversation, we know that, hey, there are services that are available. With the screening, we educate the client, hey, we can refer you, we can link you to a mental health counselor. So all these services are available on the spot, in the mobile unit. So that's really working. This is the impact, and this is what we're looking for. Like, after 3 months, we will be able to tell you how many people getting tested. So far, we have 20 people already on PrEP, and this is what's working. So just a couple months, we started implementing the mobile PrEP, and it's really making a big impact.
And that continuous visibility in the community really helps with readiness, right? When people are screened for things and maybe referred for certain services, but they're just not ready yet, right? Well, we know that the mobile unit will be there again. We know when it'll be there again. People can look that information up, right?
Definitely.
So let's hear from our community advocates. I want to hear about strategies that we need to incorporate to ensure that testing and education services are welcoming, are inclusive, and mindful of cultural beliefs or fears about HIV.
I just want to, because when Andrea was talking, this is something that just absolutely hits me, right? Because we always talk about like sex work and how we have to do outreach to sex workers and how we have to meet people where they're at, whether that's the bathhouse or wherever they're having sex. And when we think about like harnessing the power of social media, like one thing that is often left out is like, why aren't we harnessing the power of porn? And I know how it sounds, and it's like, but it's true, right? It's like, if you look at the websites that have the most traffic, it's like, why are we not harnessing the power of these people that everyone is logging into their computer to watch for the most part? And using that as a starting point for like our PrEP campaigns, is we're meeting people where they're at in the real world and is where they're having sex. Why are we not meeting people where they're at in the digital world? And at the same time, that can work to destigmatize this idea that sex work is something taboo. Mm-hmm. So that was just, thank you. Like, it's like, we need to do something like that.
And we, on top of that, also, we have the sex worker outreach program coordinator. She's focusing on the sex workers, go out there, offering them the service that are available, not to get them in trouble, but to offer them services, and they are taking advantage of that. Because so when they know that that person that they are talking to, that's not the police officer, they are not undercover. They are actually providing additional services, and that's what they are taking advantage of those. And we have the late night outreach program, which consists in hitting the club, the nightclub. So we are out there providing condoms and let people know, hey, PrEP is available. So this is the impact we are making right now in the community.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And we're doing a lot of those same things and making sure that we keep a constant voice of, constant education, striving for leveling the playing field as far as knowledge goes. Once again, a lot of people feel like this is over their head or is something that doesn't necessarily concern them. But we really focus on having those real, frank, open, and honest conversations. We do that through peers talking to one another. We do that through podcasts. We do that through so many different outlets to where there shouldn't be a place where you can't see these conversations being had. And having them in a frank and open and honest way. A lot of times people jump to either abstinence or condoms when they talk about sex, and we should honestly incorporate PrEP in that conversation when we're talking about sex. It should be honestly one of the main things that we talk about before getting to the condoms and the abstinence part, because ultimately if we are a sexually identifying person, then that's an inevitability in our lives, and we really should think about the ways of how we're going to keep ourselves safe when that inevitability happens.
You hit it right there. When you talk about sex, you add safe sex into it. So that's what is working. And the non-judgmental approach, that's what working. Talking to a sex worker, when she knows that she's not being judged, that's when she open up to you. So that's what we need to do. Yeah.
I think that it's really one of the things that Shay said that really resonates with me is the idea of feeling that this does not concern you. I think that a lot of folks in the communities that we're trying to reach out to feel simply that HIV is something that will never touch them. They will think, I'm married, or I'm in a stable relationship, or if I'm on PrEP, what does that say about me, right? So all of these are very important topics that have to be almost kind of like brought out in our educational campaigns, right? When you're thinking about, for example, right, if you are going to go in front of your boss and you have a proposal, right, you think about her and you think about everything she could ask you, right? Let me think about every possible question she can throw at me, and I'm going to try to have an answer for everything. Being open means that we need to understand that these are the misconceptions that exist. And this is the culture that we are in. So let's work backwards, right? Like, how do we talk to the person who is thinking, oh, I don't want people to know that I'm on PrEP because, what if they think that I am like having sex with a ton of people? What if that affects my job? So how do we speak to that person? How do we speak to the person who is married, happily married? And we want to encourage them to get on PrEP. So what are we going to tell them? And obviously the other communities that are more open to the idea, that are having sex and talking about sex. So how can we make PrEP just part of like a kitchen table conversation, right? Hey, are you on PrEP? Oh, you know what? You should be on PrEP, right? We do that to our friends, just like we do it for everything else, right? So like if somebody comes to my house and they're sneezing, I tell them about, my allergy medicine. I do. I'm like, oh, this works for me. Like maybe this works for you too. Yeah. So that, I think that will really help to not only educate, but come from a source that people actually trust.
Creating that welcoming, non-judgmental space, like you mentioned. And that's a huge component of the harm reduction program when it comes to our syringe exchange program that's going to be implemented here in Orange County, is creating that face where people can be understanding, people can be open about their willingness to get treatment yet, or at least to help reduce their risk for HIV or other infections in the Orange County area.
I think something that we also have to address around PrEP is, yes, it's wonderful. We want to get as many people on PrEP as we can, but it's almost like at some point we're going to have to have the same tough conversation that we had to have when condoms were like the main thing, right? Where at some point we had to look around the table and be like, not everyone is going to use condoms. So it's like right now, yes, we're absolutely super excited about PrEP. I would absolutely tell everyone to be on PrEP. At some point we're going to have that conversation, like not everyone is going to use PrEP. So it's like, how do we keep moving that research forward? How do we keep telling people, like, if I have an individual that comes to me and is like, I'm not interested in PrEP, do I know the current research studies that are happening in Orlando for medication that is an alternative to PrEP? Because that might, that person may be like, no, I'm not going to take a daily pill. We've all ran into that at some point. It's like, do I have another ace up my sleeve where I can be like, there's OIC down the street and they're hosting an HIV vaccine study. You might be a candidate for that. So where like if you don't have the answer right there, you still have another round of options to get them to.
Just more things in your prevention toolkit. So you're not just focusing on PrEP, you're not just focusing on condoms, but you also knowing what your status is, how often you should be tested. So it's just a layered approach of what is best for me as the person. And sometimes we can't force certain things on people if they're not ready. But you can provide the education so later on they say, you know, I remember when that lady told me about PrEP. Maybe it's time for me to get on that in addition to using condoms, or without using condoms, we have to have that conversation too, because not everyone is having using condoms to have sex. So we have to make sure that it's an individual approach when we're providing this education to people, that is what is best for that person, not for me as the agency or what my beliefs are, but for the person, what is best for them.
That's a great thing, because that's what we do at Positive Assistance on the mobile unit. We give people options, because we are not pushing PrEP for everybody to be on PrEP, because we know not everybody will like PrEP, and we have to educate them like, hey, besides abstinence, there are self-care, there are masturbation. Those are options to take care of yourself. So when you're horny, there's way to still take care of yourself without putting yourself out there. So yeah.
Thank you.